refer to them as those weaknesses or bad habits come out. And the biggest thing is just noticing it and understanding like, okay, I'm not in the mindset right now where I can execute properly based on my defined edge, so I need to take a step away.
Yeah, I agree. And I also would like to tell you, like, also, you know, relative to your experience and how long you've been trading, also, I feel like there's a point where people start thinking that, you know, that you're making a mistake because it's just part of it. But also, let me actually reword myself there because I think that didn't sound. I would say that you shouldn't be hard on yourself. I feel like failure needs to be accepted before it gets rejected in order for you to be successful. Like you can reject, like for example, as a business owner who's starting a new business, I am going to go through a lot of ebb and flows of trials and tribulations, and I'm going to be experimenting a lot with what works and what doesn't. But eventually, when you find something that works, then you can say, oh, well, this is not part of the procedure. This isn't part of the policy that we have in place. This isn't part of our structure. So when an employee acts out of that structure, you can easily identify the problem because you're like, who told you to do that? You know? But in the beginning stages, I would say anybody who's, it's not like a time deadline. Um, it's just somebody who hasn't fully understood themselves yet and also hasn't fully understood their trading models. For example, I have one of my best friends who I try to always kind of give advice to and mentor along the way. And I feel like every other quarter, he's already changing strategies. Like he finds very like subtle success, and it could be the craziest thing, right? But then he'll make a claim, and he just told me this yesterday. He was like, "Oh, my edge just hasn't came to me yet." And I'm like, back then I probably would have believed him, as an inexperienced trader. But now that I have the experience, I'm just like, no, you're just not allowing, you're not giving yourself room for failure. Now, you're looking for correction in every sense. And that's a natural mechanism of the brain to want to hypercorrect things when we want things to be right. And normally when we get things wrong. So like you'll always hear when people like, med students, when they want to study and things like that, they're consistently trying to take practice exams. And the most efficient way to learn any type of, material is to take a practice exam. And the reason why they always, or these scholars always recommend that you would go ahead and take a practice exam is because it activates hypercorrection when you get a question wrong. Because now you get a question wrong and you're going to remember that you got that question wrong because that's how much emphasis that your brain puts on the negative things. And so going back to my friend who's a trader and most traders is that they have the tendency of putting so much emphasis in magnifying failure that they automatically want to hypercorrect it. And it's not necessarily them, it's just how the brain copes with the avoidance of pain. And you have to be able to sit there and counteract that as a trader, which is why trading is so hard, and sit there and say, no, that's this thought that I'm expressing or that I'm feeling or that I'm internalizing right now is totally incorrect because data, the data that I've been collecting over time, I've been on these charts for X amount of years. So you couldn't tell me that an order block doesn't work, even if I fail when I'm trading the order block. An order block works, but I just don't know how to operate with it as a person who's managing, not only their funds, but emotions as they're going through, you know, a specific trading day. And you have to be mature enough eventually as a trader to be okay with failing on a day-to-day basis when you're trading yourself, but always refer back to data. Like if the data says that these things are working for you and you're feeling that, again, cognitive dissonance inside saying that my model doesn't work or I can't trust it, or I should maybe learn something else, you have to always like pause and like you have to kind of identify like, why do I want to go to another strategy? Like, what is the goal of me getting into another strategy and probably going through a whole nother learning curve? And I think that's what a lot of people take for granted is the time that they have. We have a very short time on this earth. We don't have a lot of time, especially as a young person. And maybe your situation might change in your life where, you know, even if even if you wanted to trade in the morning, you probably couldn't trade later on, you know? So the fact is that right now we have the availability, we have the opportunity to be able to trade. And one of the silliest things we can do as traders is to facilitate majority of our resources and most importantly, our most important resource, which is time, to just strategy hop every time that we find ourselves to be incorrect or every time that we lose a trade. And you have to come to realization that it's you. It's you. It's not overnight session doesn't work. It's not an order block doesn't work. It's not fair value gaps don't work. It's you. The way that you're internalizing these things, you know, if I had to go back and tell myself as a young trader, I'm still young, but you know, I started trading when I was, fortunately enough, I started trading when I was 18 years old. So I'm 24 now, turning 25 this month. So if I were to go back and tell myself, some of the things I would tell myself would be, yo, when you find something that works and it makes trading easy and simple for you, proceed to fill all your eggs in that one particular basket. And if we were to compare what a basket means in trading, we can say a concept, a strategy. Like if an order block's been working for you and you've been able to see some sort of returns from that, and that's without you trying to refine, that's with you just using the most standardized basic form of utilization with that specific concept, and you're able to see returns without, you know, trying to refine and just doing the bare minimal with that concept, and you're seeing returns. Imagine if you could just be very vast in your understanding with that specific one thing. I heard a podcast recently where someone was saying, you know, most people like to know everything because of the curiosity that they carry, and they like knowing things 1 inch deep and vast as the ocean. So pretty much saying like, like for example, let's say I'm learning programming. Sorry, guys. Let's say I'm learning programming, and as you guys know, there's a million programming languages. Um, Same thing with just any language. There's French, you know, there's English, there's Spanish, but you're not gonna be very well versed in all these languages. It's impossible. And you may be well versed to a good average in all of them, but how about if you were just to take one thing and just prioritize on that one thing and increase your understanding and depth in that thing? And then you'd be able to really, you know, pinpoint things in your trading system. So it's like, what use does it have for you to want to learn a breaker tomorrow, but for the last 3 years, you've been using fair value gaps. And fair value gaps is where you've seen some sort of return. And when you look back and you need to find confidence in the times where, you know, your trading isn't working, you're going to refer not to the breaker, but you're going to refer back to what you've been using because that's where you've seen your success. But the thing is, instead of us wanting to, you know, become aware of the issue and the specific concept, the trading model, whatever it is, strategy, our brain automatically wants to hypercorrect. And one of the mechanisms we do for hypercorrecting is the changing of something. We want to tweak something. And the truth is, you don't have to tweak anything. You don't have to tweak nothing. How about like I was telling my best friend who I'm like mentoring right now with trading, and he has passed so many funded challenges within just such a short span of time. Um, I'll even be honest, he's passed more challenges than me with the concepts that I've been teaching him. And maybe that's just because my style in trading is a lot different than his, and I'm a lot more, ego driven, and I would say a lot more ambitious. So for me, some of the risk parameters that they have inside of these funded accounts don't really serve me well, especially because I'm a person who likes scaling in and things like that. So, sometimes when I scale in and I take a loss, these losses are, large for one setup. Um, but also if I win, these wins are also large as well. And it's something that I've had to like cope with for a very long time. Like, maybe the parameters of these challenges aren't, what I need. And I'm not saying that I can't trade challenges. It's just that as far as me as a trader, like that is a weakness of mine. A lot of the times when I'm trading funded accounts, it's a weakness of mine. But when I'm trading personal funds or I'm trading, paper trading, like I honestly don't have a switch. Like live trading to me is the same thing as paper trading. Like, because I'm just simply using mechanical things like order blocks, that take liquidity, overnight session. For me, it's the same thing every time. So it's like I don't before there was really like I would say an emotional factor that played into a role, but like for me nowadays, it's like, yo, whatever I could do on a demo or I could do paper trading carries over if I'm using a system. Like if I'm using something, an approach that remains consistent and routinial, I'm able to implement that onto my personal, you know, trading account. And it wasn't until like 2 years ago when I had a conversation with Kish and Dwayne, and they told me, bro, just trade on your personal account, bro. And I only got a little, that was very short-lived, that specific time, because, you know, the US had banned Forex. So any sort of MT4, MT5 brokers were all taken away from me, stripped away from me. And that was like the one time like I came to a conclusion, like it came alive for me. I was like, wow, like I'm taking 20 accounts, $20 accounts, and I'm flipping them into 300, $400. And I'm flipping these accounts every like 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. And I'm just withdrawing, and I got to do that at least like 3 to 4 times before, it was very short lived. It was only like for 2 months that I was able, 3 months or something like that, that I was able to trade like that. And then, you know, I've had to then go to a point where I'm transitioning into futures. And man, like it may seem like a placebo effect for many, but it was hard for me to start trading from just my computer. It's definitely different from your phone, and the accessibility of it was definitely a lot more difficult for me to transition into futures because, I work full time. So it's like I can't pull up a chart without, you know, being around my manager, or I have to close a tab or do this while my manager's around or not trade at all and then miss a lot of trading opportunities because where I'm at, it's all customer service where I'm at, and I work in banking. And so it's a lot of face-to-face public relationships and you have to be able to navigate through that. And a lot of the times because of my experience in the workplace in my full-time career, I've always had to I've always had to deal with that and it creates some sort of anxiety. But you see how external factors also affect the trading. Like it's not just your understanding, it's not just your trading model. It's literally the full scope, the full realm of things. And if you're mature in that and understanding and being able to embrace that, that's your current stance in life. You would be more focused on trying to figure out when can I trade? How can I trade? And what things can I get away with at work to be able to trade? Um, and it's not all based on the premise of my understanding or that I suck as a trader. It's probably just that your environment is not built for you to succeed to the maximum capabilities, you know? Like, who knows? Maybe you're trading while you're playing some very loud music, and the music is very distracting as you're trading. You perceive it as maybe something that's, you know, subpar, and it doesn't affect your performance at all because you're enjoying yourself. But, you know, you can't focus when you're singing the lyrics or, to a song or you're bumping and just, making beats and all you're doing is listening to music. It's like, you know, maybe that's not the environment for you to thrive in. And maybe you need total tranquility and peace and just quietness. And so it's like you have to find like you kind of like have to navigate with yourself and who you are as a person and like find out what works for you. Um, and what won't give you anxiety. Like for example, for me, I might want to trade on my computer at work, but maybe just having the idea that maybe the information's technology department, IT, is looking at my screen, that may cause anxiety as a trader at work. So maybe I have to trade on a personal device versus trading on the actual company desktop. So those are things that you have to become aware of, and where these things spark from. So, but yeah, I don't want to keep talking to you guys about just straight up psychology, but it's a good talk for sure. If you guys ever wanted to dive into that, we can always do that. But yo, I wanna know where everyone's at. Like I know that we don't have that many people here, but that's totally fine. Um, you know, Matea, how are you? FX Trader, how are you? How are you guys? I hope you guys are listening. And Tyler, I hope that was insightful for you.
Yeah, it absolutely was, bro. I really do appreciate that.
Awesome, awesome. Um, what do you guys want to talk about? Any particular things that you guys been dealing with, or you know, something that you're not understanding in your own trading model? This is a quiet group. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, so I guess we could just start with, analyzing the charts. I think that this group is a little too quiet. If I don't take the wheel, it's gonna be hard for us to have actual productive call. So um I've been finding a lot of success recently, kind of just using some of the ideas that I was introduced to by our mentor, Kashane. Um, and also ICT stuff, of course. ICT will always remain as my first mentor. He's the one that brought us. into this whole algorithmic approach, and I appreciate both of those gentlemen's work. I think that ICT provided the foundation and Kish provided the, logical thought process, and he also provided the refinement to the concepts, and he pretty much, sharpened the iron. For me, it's like getting an enhanced upgrade when, you're getting mentored by Kish. And so it's like an enchantment. But one of the key things that has been helping me is Kish talks about providing a detailed purpose for every specific time frame. And like inherently you must use, the higher time frames different from the lower time frames. But how about if we could have took it a step further and just use one time frame for just one specific thing and not be so geared to want to just scroll. I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of us have these social media platforms on our phones, and the first thing that we do is we tend to get on that social media platform. And because these companies capitalize off of people's attention span and people's dopamine behaviors, um, you know, they create shorts such as YouTube or Instagram where they create reels, and now you're just dead scrolling. Instead of you wanting to filter out the actual useful information that you're going to utilize, now your brain is just, you know, filtering through junk. It doesn't know what information you want to learn. You're just introducing it to a lot of information at one time. And so we tend to do the same thing with time frames, especially when I started off trading, like people are like, you got to be able to use all time frames. And they're correct in a sense that yes, you can use time frame. But I think that if you keep it within the scope and mature perspective as a technical analysis that, yes, if I use the daily a certain way, I can inherently use the other time frames that same way. But if you use that in an abusive manner where you're allowing yourself to just scroll through time frames because you just want to find an opportunity, you're going to find yourself finding more than the opportunities that you were looking for. The same way that when you're scrolling on these social media platforms, you are finding yourself with more information than what you intended to use. And so it's the same effect. Um, you get to trading with multiple time frames, and now you start forcing, an opportunity, or you start forcing the idea that an opportunity is present. And, you know, your brain doesn't know how to filter that. Number one, it doesn't know what you're trying to utilize it for. But if you have a specific use for every specific time frame, you would find yourself creating a system, and your brain now knows what to associate this specific time frame with. So for example, if you start repeating to yourself and you start internalizing that the 5 minute is always just for entries, well, that's exactly how your process will pan out as you're trading during live conditions. If your brain associates the 5 minute with just entries, you will always go to the 5 minute as of force of habit for entries. And you have to do that with every time frame. You have to associate particular time frames with a particular use instead of trying to filter out what's useful and what's not useful. And it creates, again, cognitive dissonances. Um, the last thing you want to do is create cognitive dissonances in your trading. And as I explained to you earlier, Tyler, it's like having It's like having the abundance of options. Like, you go to eat steak with your girlfriend and you know what you want. You came in with the idea that you wanted to eat steak, but your wife or your girlfriend, is looking at the menu and the server has came up like 3 times or 5 times and they're like, "Oh, do you guys know what you guys want to order yet? Oh, you need more time? Okay, I'm gonna give you some more time." And then she comes back, says the same thing. "Oh, do you guys know what you want to order yet?" It's like, "Ah, I know what I want to order yet." Tyler's like, "Oh, I know I want steak." But then the wife is still like, "Ah, can you give me more time? Can you give me more time?" And so it's like that's what you do. Like that's what your brain internalizes. Like that's a perfect way of that manifesting in a practical sense where, your wife has so many options to pick from that she doesn't know which one to pick or use or want, And you practically do the same thing when you're approaching your trading that way. You're going to the daily, the 4 hour. Now you're breaking it into the 15 seconds, the 30, and it's yes, it may work, but it's not beneficial to a certain extent where, if you had just used the 4 hour for a particular thing and don't change it for anything, then every time you go on the 4 hour, you know what you're looking for. And it's not because you back tested this way, it's because your brain knows what to use and internalize the 4 hour with. And I hope that makes sense. And so now going on to the charts, how does this all apply to what I'm trying to say? Well, with everything that I just said, the daily, the 4 hour, the 1 hour, the 5 minute, and the 1 minute all have particular specific uses for me. Um, and when you take trading with that approach, a lot of things become a lot clearer to you. And we can start with the daily. I'm going to just remove all these drawings. Here, the daily, I'm just trying to figure out where is price going? Like, what are they trying to reach for? And what's the order flow? Like, what's the current stance on price? Like, are we bullish or bearish? What have the candlesticks been showing to me? And there might be a key level as well that may create, some sort of brick wall on the smaller time frames. And the daily is more like I would say, a very loose time frame because like I could apply everything on any time frame. And if I wanted to be loose on any time frame, I want to be loose on this one. Just because, I want to find my key levels here. I want to find the fair value gaps here, the inefficiencies here. Because if the daily has parent authority over everything else, then I know that, the smaller time frames are going to be made up of the direction where the daily wants to draw to. And that's like the key fundamental understanding that you have to have. And if a change in the state of delivery happens on the daily time frame, you know, I know that the market has the possibility of taking a turn. I just have to figure out how I'm going to, you know, be in accordance and congruence. How will I be parallel to that fact, and not go contrary to the higher time frame? And that's all I use a daily for. So I don't even have to draw anything up. I hope that you guys just understood it from what I meant. Um, the 4 hour for me, very simple. 4 hour for me has been just finding my fair value gaps. For some reason, I tend to see that fair value gaps off these 4 hour time frames are just so reactive. Like the reactions that come from price are so reactive. And, you know, I'm a scalper, I'm a day trader, I'm someone who trades off of the reactions of price. As a price action trader, that's what we tend to be. So the 4 hour provides that for me. And all I do with the 4 hour is just find a fair value gap to the proximity where price is currently at. And that alone is the function of the 4 hour for me. And it doesn't serve anything else. Um, and then there's certain filters that, a bearish daily range, a bullish daily range, a change in state of delivery. Those things always remain constant in every time frame because those are just filters to understanding where price is probably headed, what liquidity price needs to take out, um, what direction is price going into, and what's the sort of elements that would drive price, in a particular manner with volatility, um, you know, direction, time, and those filters always remain to be true on every time frame. But I'm going into the 4 hour with just a specific function of looking for, a fair value gap. Um, and that's all that does for me. The 1 hour is very particular. The 1 hour serves to me as a marker for liquidity. It tells me where the liquidity that they're targeting for the New York Open, it tells me every time. And based off of the first liquidity reference that is taken, I know that price is going the opposite direction. So, for example, if sell side liquidity is taken, I possibly know that for the rest of the day, we're going to go for buys, or we're going to go for, buy side delivery and offered buy side efficiency. Um, and that remains true on the hourly. And I have a specific marker that would always delineate that for me. And I'm not the creator of this. I just internalize it probably differently than what a lot of people do. And I think that the 1 hour simply serves a specific function of that liquidity reference point. Where's the liquidity as far as the one that they're going to take in proximity to the 8 a.m. candle or the 7 a.m. candle, or the 9 a.m. candle at that as well. So those 3 hours for me are like the markers. And it also serves as the continuum of the 4 hour. If the 4 hour doesn't have a fair value gap to provide for me, then I have to find a fair value gap, not on the 4 hour, but on the 1 hour. Because if I were to just pick another fair value gap, like in the 4 hour, that's just way above price or way below price, where, current price is at in proximity of that, I would have to wait a lot more. And that just doesn't fit with my current personality and trading approach. I kind of like being there, you know, every other day, if not every day, and being able to capitalize off these quick reactions. Again, I'm a scalper, day trader. So what use does it have? What's the use of me identifying as that if I'm not even referencing to things that are in proximity to price? You know what I mean? Um, this call's about to end, but we're definitely about to have a part two. So if you guys want to join back, I definitely do recommend it.